In Spain, after winning an absolute majority in the general elections, the leader of the Socialist Party has been speaking about his determination to lead the country to progress. In Gibraltar, political leaders have commented on a reference to Gibraltar made by the Spanish socialist leader. The British Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher, has promised that the West will keep its commitment to West Berlin. At the end of one of the most bizarre murder trials in Australia, a court has decided that a baby girl was killed by her mother. Those are the headlines. After winning an absolute majority in yesterday's general election, the leader of the Spanish Socialist Party has been speaking about his determination to lead the country to progress. Senor Felipe Gonzalez, who is expected to be sworn in as Prime Minister in December, called on all Spaniards to join in the task of making Spanish society more modern and consolidate democracy. He also gave a pledge that the socialist government would seek to regain sovereignty over Gibraltar and develop further links with Latin America. The party's deputy leader said there would be an immediate freeze on the negotiations for Spain to play a military role in NATO, and a referendum would be held in Spain's total withdrawal from the alliance. In Gibraltar, the Chief Minister, Sir Joshua Hassan, said that the statement was not indicative of an attack on Gibraltar.
In fact, he was the last to appear, and naturally he covered all the aims of his party. And I would think that if he had not mentioned Gibraltar, he would have been accused of trying to have a sellout. So I think it is traditional and to be expected that anyone in taking over power in Spain should reiterate the claim to Gibraltar. And that, I think, is not indicative that he is going to launch an attack on Gibraltar in the 4 years he's in power. What he is doing is making sure that nobody says that he is not going to claim continue to claim Gibraltar in itself. On the other hand, it is, I think, to be noted that in the Socialist Party's manifesto, they did say that they would restore communications when the circumstances were appropriate, and they separate the question of the claim to sovereignty to the question of communications. So in that respect, I think the success of the Socialist Party has some bonus. But I'm not surprised that he should have said that, because this is a standard Spanish policy across the whole spectrum of Spanish political life.
For his part, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Peter Isola, did not see much change in the situation over the lifting of the restrictions.
The victory of Felipe Gonzalez was not unexpected. I think the comment he made on his victory speech about reintegrating Gibraltar into Spain is possibly, or very probably, a reaction to the undoubted victory or undoubted heavy support that Popular Alliance has had, and I think that there Felipe Gonzalez is already showing sensitivity in the way the right has voted. And there's no question in my mind that although the victory of the socialists could herald a new era as far as Spain is concerned, whether it will herald a new era as far as Gibraltar is concerned, of course, is the big question mark. I think we have to accept that all Spanish political parties claim sovereignty over Gibraltar, but having regard to that program we had on television in Man Alive, and where we heard the Foreign Secretary of Spain, or the prospective candidate for Foreign Secretary of Spain, I think it's perhaps a little surprising that Senor Gonzalez has put so much stress on this issue. So I don't suppose we will see much change in the situation as a result of what has become polarization of the political forces in Spain. I think the elimination of the UCD is perhaps unfortunate.
And the chairman of the all-party British group, the Gibraltar group in Parliament, Mr. Albert Macquarie, has asked for an immediate meeting with the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Francis Pym, to discuss the whole question of Gibraltar following the Spanish election results. Commenting on Senor Gonzalez's speech, Mr. Macquarie said that if this was the way Spain was going to conduct itself, there was no way that the British Parliament would permit the accession of Spain into the EEC so long as the Lisbon Agreement had not been fully implemented. Mr. Macquarie has given a guarantee that the British Gibraltar Group will stand firmly behind Gibraltar if the Spaniards make any attempt to take over Gibraltar against the wishes of the people. With details of the voting in the province of Cádiz and reaction from the Campo area, here's the report now from our reporter Gina Cortés.
In the province of Cádiz, 6 out of the 8 seats for the lower chamber or Congress have gone to the Socialists, and the remaining 2 to Senor Fraga's Alianza Popular party. And in the Senate, the province will be represented by 3 Socialist senators and 1 belonging to Alianza Popular. In the Campo area, and in La Línea especially, the PSOE has received massive support from the electorate, 75% of the poll, 7,000 votes more than in last May's Andalusian elections in La Línea. The mayor, Senor Juan Carmona, was jubilant this morning. He said the practical collapse of the up-to-now ruling party, the UCD, in the Campo area was due to the position it had adopted on the question of the frontier. Senor Carmona said the Socialists wanted the immediate restoration of communications with Gibraltar. He could see, he said, the frontier opening for pedestrian traffic by Christmas time, shortly after the new government takes office in early December. When pressed as to why for pedestrian traffic only, Senor Carmona explained that the Socialists had always favored the gradual lifting of restrictions and quoted a motion along these lines they presented to the Cortes in March 1980, before the Lisbon Agreement was signed. Both the mayor and the secretary of the PSOE branch in La Línea, Senor Rafael Palomino, insisted, however, that this did not mean that the progressive lifting of restrictions would be used as a leverage in any negotiations. It was, in their opinion, they said, the only sensible way of achieving a smooth transition at the organizational level for full resumption of communications, giving people time to talk and prepare. The mayor, Senor Carmona, and the PSOE official, Senor Palomino, announced they'd be visiting Gibraltar next week, principally to establish contacts with the newly formed Association of Spaniards residing on the Rock. They didn't rule out, however, the possibility of contacts with Gibraltar's political leaders.
GBC's reporter Gina Cortés reporting from the Campo area. In yesterday's elections, the Socialists, PSOE, Partido Socialista Obrero Español, won 201 seats in the 350-member parliament. The main opposition party will be the right-wing Popular Alliance, AP, Alianza Popular, with just over 100 seats, 10 times more than they had before. The centre party, UCD, Unión de Centro Democrático, which forms the outgoing administration, fared badly, and the Prime Minister, Senor Calvo Sotelo, had several of his cabinet colleagues lost their parliamentary seats. The Communists, PSOE, Partido Comunista Español, won 5 seats, and the CDS, Centro Democrático Social, led by former Prime Minister Adolfo Suárez, won only 2 seats. 2 regional parties from Catalonia and the Basque Country won more seats than some of the major parties. The BBC's Christopher Morris now looks at how polling went throughout yesterday.
It's the 3rd general election in Spain since General Franco's death nearly 7 years ago. And after 4 decades of dictatorship, Spaniards are now becoming quite accustomed to democracy. In Spain, police with guns were posted at every polling centre, while Spain's armed forces remained on a state of maximum alert, ironically after persistent threats of a military coup. The political leaders were up early to cast their votes. One of the main contenders, Manuel Fraga, arrived too early, almost an hour before polling began. But the leader of Spain's conservative right, the Popular Alliance, patiently took up his place in the queue. A former ambassador to London, Senor Fraga was also a minister under General Franco, which explains why he's now dubbed the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of Spanish politics. He professes admiration, though, of British parliamentary institutions. He wants a British-style 2-party democracy established in Spain. and undoubtedly he's revived the flagging fortunes of the right wing and expects a close finish. But few Spaniards doubt that Felipe Gonzalez, leader of the socialist left, will easily romp home the winner and be elected the new Prime Minister of Spain. His wife by his side, he arrived to vote at the school near their modest Madrid apartment. But as Prime Minister, he'd be expected to live in a palace and tackle Spain's major problems of inflation, unemployment and terrorism.
The British Prime Minister, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, has given a promise that the West will keep its commitment to West Berlin. She was speaking at an official reception there after visiting the wall dividing the city and laying flowers at a monument to people killed whilst trying to flee to the West. Mrs. Thatcher accused the Soviet bloc countries of ruthlessness and barbarism and said that the West must maintain a strong military deterrent. She said that events in Poland had shown that Soviet authority maintained by force could not survive, and there would be no lasting stability or prosperity in Poland until the authorities implemented the reforms and renewals sought by the people. Earlier, Mrs. Thatcher had talks with the West German Chancellor, Dr. Kohl, in Bonn, which she described as very successful. They both expressed the hope that the dispute with the United States over the Soviet gas pipeline would soon be resolved. Mrs. Thatcher arrived in Bonn yesterday for talks with Mr. Kohl. Among the topics expected during their discussions were London's case for a major reduction of its future payments to the European Community budget. The BBC's John Simpson now reports.
The German Army Guard of Honor paid its respects with pre-war rifles. Modern NATO ones don't stand up to ceremony. But the ceremony was anyway brief. Mrs. Thatcher's visit is a working one, with a long but not particularly awkward list of subjects to discuss. Even the tension between Western Europe and the United States over the Soviet gas pipeline is easing a little, and Mrs. Thatcher and the new German Chancellor agree in wanting a better relationship with Washington. Mrs. Thatcher will be raising the question of Britain's EEC dues and looking for German support at the UN over the Falklands. Neither speaks the other's language, though for the sake of the cameras they tried. Dr. Kohl's month in office has shown him that his real problems are at home. Yesterday his budget cut child benefits and raised national insurance contributions and VAT. By Christmas, unemployment here could be 10%.
Security forces in Northern Ireland have been investigating at the scene of the massive bomb explosion which killed 3 members of the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, on Wednesday. Roadblocks were set up and sniffer dogs were sent into the area.
Forces were in no hurry to clear the blast zone. There's always the risk the IRA had planted other booby traps. It was midday before teams of soldiers and tracker dogs began a painstaking search. No one was allowed near the huge crater, 60 feet wide and 25 feet deep, made by one of the largest terrorist bombs ever used in Northern Ireland. At Lurgan, police put on show a stolen motorcycle and 2 helmets, which the 2 IRA bombers apparently used to escape after setting off the blast. The men who died came from Ulster's newest police station, a concrete fortress that replaced one destroyed by an IRA bomb 10 years ago. 8 other police officers from Lurgan headquarters have already died in the Troubles. In Armagh today, the funeral of another terrorist victim, Mr. Peter Corrigan, the father of 11, shot dead on Monday. Today, a priest described him as an innocent family man. Mr. Corrigan campaigned in last week's Assembly election for the IRA's political wing. Among wreaths was one from the IRA's military command, another from the INLA. The security forces watch from a discreet distance.
One of the more bizarre murder trials of recent times has ended in the northern Australian town of Darwin, with the court deciding that a baby girl was killed by her mother and not by a wild dog or dingo, as she had claimed. Mrs. Linda Chamberlain was sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labour for murdering her 9-week-old daughter, Azira, during a camping holiday at Ayers Rock in Central Australia in August 1980. Her husband, a minister with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, was found guilty of being an accessory and will be sentenced on Monday. The Chamberlains maintained that the dingo had taken the baby out of its cot and carried it away, but the jury agreed with the prosecution that Mrs. Chamberlain, who was expecting another baby shortly, had herself killed the baby by cutting its throat. The baby's body has not been found. Reports from Nigeria say that more than 300 people, many of them policemen, have been killed in religious riots this week in the town of Maiduguri in the northeast of the country. The Nigerian news agency said that 110 policemen were sent to quell the upheaval, but only 10 had returned. Some of the missing men have been taken prisoner by Muslim fanatics. The agency said mass burials were taking place in Maiduguri and an army unit was standing by. There are reports that the troubles have now spread to Kaduna, a town several hundred miles to the west. A report issued in London says that much of Gibraltar's heritage is either under threat, misused or rotting away, but that it could be turned into a major asset. Derek Grant reports on the latest study published by the Save Britain's Heritage organisation.
The study, subtitled Save Gibraltar's Heritage, highlights over 400 buildings or group of buildings worthy of protection and suggests which historic buildings could be adapted to new uses and play a positive role in Gibraltar's greatest potential growth industry, tourism. The new report also proposes 3 special conservation action areas in the Old Town. It says the Gibraltar government could give improvement grants and encourage owners and landlords to improve standards of accommodation in these areas and at the same time carry out external repairs and repainting. The report is critical of the absence of legislative protection accorded to Gibraltar's many traditional town houses, as well as 2 of the massive fortifications. It attacks what it says is the total lack of public participation in decisions made about them and points out that applications for planning permission are neither advertised nor open to public inspection as they are in the UK. Derek Grant, London.
The speculation over Air Europe's appointment of a general sales agent for scheduled and freight operations is over. An agreement has been signed formally appointing Pegasus Air and Sea Services as the airline's sales agents for the Gibraltar area. The appointment applies to both passenger and freight operation in connection with the proposed flight schedules to the United Kingdom. The civil aviation authorities in London have convened a hearing to examine Air Europe's application for the 6th of December, and a decision is expected early in the new year. Air Europe's application is for 4 flights a week, as from April of next year. Mr. Otilio Viale, Managing Director of Pegasus, expressed satisfaction with the arrangement and spoke of the great confidence he has in the Air Europe operation and its ability to serve the needs of Gibraltar as a whole. Local boys from Bayside Comprehensive School are presently taking part in a work experience programme with the Royal Air Force. The first of these, Raju Alwani, has already started his visit. All in all, the scheme will operate for 2 months, and during this time, some 8 to 10 boys will visit the Royal Air Force. The scheme aims at introducing youngsters to the work environment, and whilst there, they can experience the various aspects of air traffic operations, fire services, supply, and administration.
Sport now, and tomorrow the GFA Premier League kicks off and the road racing season gets underway. At Victoria Stadium, Glasses United start off the defence of their title against Lions tomorrow at 6 o'clock, and on Sunday at 5:15 Manchester United face the Royal Navy. And in Division 1 the fixtures are tomorrow 4:15 Pegasus versus the One Staffords, and Sunday 3:30 Gibraltar United against St Jago's United. And on the adjoining hockey field, 2nd Division fixtures will be played tomorrow, and in the 1st Division, Sunday's matches are 2:15 Hawks against Collegians and 3:30 Rock Gunners Toyota against Eagles. Volleyball carries on for a further weekend inside the Stadium Sports Centre with an American tournament for both men's and women's teams in similar fashion to last weekend's basketball. And basketball on Sunday morning, 2 matches at 10:30 Pegasus versus the women's rest selection, and at noon Amstel Blue Stars against the men's rest selection. And presentation of last season's trophies will be effected after these matches, and the league starts on Monday. The volleyball carries on with the 2 finals, 8:30 for the men's on Saturday and 8:15 the women's on Sunday. And the road race, it's the shortest in the Olympus Sports League, 3 3/4 miles. It starts from outside the Anchor Bar in Queensway, and the runners go via Glasses, Devil Star Road and Sir Herbert Miles Road, turning back at the Kalita Palace Hotel. They retrace the steps after the generating station, where they turn into the finish below the British War Memorial. And apart from last year's 3 teams, Calpians, Ludeans and Combined Services, the One Staffords have a team on their own, and they reckon that they'll do well. We'll see what happens.
Thanks, Stitch. Let's take a look at the weather. Here's the chart. Tomorrow it will be rather cloudy at first, but sunny periods are likely during the afternoon, except in parts of the city, where patches of Levanta cloud persist. Winds will continue moderate to fresh easterly. The maximum temperature expected is 20 degrees centigrade. So to the main points of the news. After winning an absolute majority in yesterday's election, the leader of the Spanish Socialist Party has been speaking about his determination to lead the country to progress, and he's given a pledge to seek to regain sovereignty over Gibraltar. In Gibraltar, the political leaders have commented on Felipe Gonzalez's statement, the chief minister saying that the statement was not indicative of an attack on Gibraltar, and the leader of the opposition say he did not see much hope for change in the frontier situation. The British Prime Minister, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, has given a promise that the West will keep its commitment to West Berlin. Those are the main points of the news. Don't forget to join us at 10:15 for a look at what's happened over the past week, news-wise, in Roundup. From the news team for the moment, good evening.